What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Average Joe's MMA podcast. I'm here today, Tyler, with my co-host Sesko. How's it going today, Sesko?
It's going good. It's going great. I'm
Going
excited
good?
to watch some talk about some heavyweight brawlers tonight.
Yeah, ignoring some of the real world news and sticking to MMA. This is everyone's oasis against the real world and all the craziness going on. So today we really plan to cover the UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Sakai coming up this weekend, Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It looks like a pretty decent card, so I'm pretty happy to see it. The most exciting fight, in my opinion, and I think your opinion as well, is the Michelle Pereira fight. So that's going to be great. But we're going to be going through the whole card, and then we actually have a few viewer questions for the first time today. Thank you, everyone, for submitting questions. We really appreciate it. We have a small audience at this point, but we really care about you guys. We want to give you the best content we possibly can. So we appreciate it, and we'll try to include you guys moving forward. Keep sending your questions to backofthemob@gmail.com. Okay. Well, with the fight card, we're actually just going to skip to the main card. The undercard, I don't really know of too many fighters. Do you have anything to say about the prelims?
No, nothing in particular. Looks like a lot of up and coming fighters, maybe a journeyman here or there, but the main card is where all the meat is, it seems.
Yep. And it's interesting. You may not recognize all the names on a card like this, but recently the cards that don't have a lot of big names seem to be impressing. Like these guys seem to be going all out. So I've been impressed, and it makes me excited because it tells me that pretty much every other week or every weekend we're getting pretty decent fights to look forward to. So I think it's a good time to be an MMA fan.
I want to tip the hat to the UFC for managing to host fights every single weekend still, it seems, during this pandemic and everything. It's a big outlet.
It's amazing the kind of system they've been able to develop and the consistency they've had. They've had a few fighters drop out because of COVID. Like actually, Ovin St. Preux was on a previous fight card, but got COVID a few weeks ago, had to drop out, and now he's on this card.
Right.
That actually may affect his performance too, and we can talk about that when we get to that card, that fight.
True. Relating to this card as well, Ricky Simone was dropped from the card as well, and I'm not sure if that was COVID related, but the cards seem to be very, very turbulent nowadays. I don't know if you heard, Glover Teixeira was recently dropped from the main event of the next UFC fight night.
I did see that, and again, that's just super sad. Like It's sad, but hopefully, just like Ovin St. Preux, hopefully in a few weeks he's right back at it. And maybe it was a case where he wasn't even really sick; he was just tested positive. And I don't know if that was the case for OSP, but it could have been.
Yeah, right. Certainly. Well, yeah. Either way, we hope for the best. Still very impressed with the UFC being able to flex around these weird times and all the failures and all the testing and stuff that's been happening. So glad to see it. Yep. So you want to go right into the first fight on the main card, which is a lightweight bout between Thiago Moises and Jalen Turner. So I don't know too much about these fighters. I don't think I've seen any of them perform recently. But I looked at them, looked at their histories. On paper, they pretty much have the exact same UFC career. They both won their fights on the Contender Series about 2 years ago. They've both gone 2-2 in the UFC since. They're meeting up together now. They're both the exact same age, so it's really exciting, real interesting to see. One of these guys might be a prospect for the future going forward. It's not easy to get on these main event cards.
Yeah.
So I'm sure both of these guys have some really impressive stuff to show us.
Yeah, they're both younger. Like you said, I think this is the time to really make yourself shine. If you're a newer fighter and you have the opportunity to be on any kind of main card, that just gives you so much exposure than you've ever had before. So one good knockout, one really outstanding fight can really take you above your colleagues. So Thiago Moises, I was actually just watching a few videos of him. He seems very dynamic. Seems like he can get submissions. I saw him doing a bunch of head kicks. He was doing some boxing. So he seems like he's a full, well-rounded MMA fighter. It should be a good fight.
I agree. And like we were talking about before, a lot of these really entertaining fights in the recent past have been fighters that we may not recognize or may not have made big names for themselves yet and just putting on amazing performances. So I hope to see that from this fight as well.
And they have something to prove, especially only 2 fights out of the Contender Series. I think they're both maybe 500 in the UFC so far. I think you mentioned that. Right. So, they both have something to prove. So I think that always leads to a good bout.
Right. So my prediction for this, I think it's a bit of a toss-up, but I'm going to give a nod to Thiago Moises. I saw he has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I feel like the culture around Brazilian jiu-jitsu and stuff led to the modern MMA that it is today. So I think he might just have the better, more well-rounded skill set than his opponent. But we'll see.
I think there's something in the water in Brazil, and that's going to help him out a lot. So Thiago Moises is my pick as well.
I completely agree. I don't think Brazilians are any more violent or less violent than anyone else in the world, but they're very good at violence, it seems.
No, I disagree. I think they're more violent. Even if so, I followed a little bit of Counter-Strike, and then in the past few years, Counter-Strike has blown up in Brazil, and there have been plenty of 15-year-olds that have received many a death threat in Brazil. So they're kind of nuts. But in Mexico, for instance, there was a fight where people were throwing bottles and crap at the arena. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh man, I love hearing crazy spectator stuff about that. One time, Bosnia lost a national soccer match, and they ripped all the seating out of the stadium and threw it onto the field.
Oh my God, there was like a drug cartel in Mexico that had that actually had a soccer match against each other, and they ended up killing like 16 people. I'm like, how do you agree to be in that? What are you doing, guys? Come on now.
Oh, that's horrible to laugh at, but man, that's it's such a unique, interesting human experience to see like gang member soccer and seeing it go poorly.
It reminds me of the movie Dictator, where the guy has the gun and he's on the track running, just shooting his opponents.
So yeah, you think like the soccer match was basically like two bosses and their cronies, and the bosses are just like scoring goals while shooting the other guys?
Yeah. They have like full armor on, so they can't get... All right.
Okay.
Well, with that, we're gonna hop into the next fight: Brian Keller versus Kevin Natividad. I think I got that right. So this is the fight that Ricky Simon dropped out of. Ricky Simon's the dude with the mullet. He looks badass. He's crazy. He's one of those fighters you always want to see because it's always an exciting fight. So it's pretty sad that
he had an amazing performance against Ray Borg in his last fight.
Yeah, no, he had absolutely an amazing performance. Actually, I think Ray Borg got cut recently.
I don't know if he got cut or if he retired, but I think he is fighting another organization still. I think he made that claim. So we might see him in Bellator in the near future. And he's got a good name for himself, so we might see some more Ray Borg. Mm-hmm. But the fight is Keller versus Natividad. So I tried looking up Kevin Natividad. I couldn't find too much information about him.
Yeah, he doesn't even have a picture on Google. So
right. So he's got a really nice record, a really good 9-1 record, but I don't think he's beaten anyone really of notice that I know. I think this might be his UFC debut, actually. So I imagine this is like an unfortunate result of Ricky Simon dropping out and then having to scramble to find a guy. But good on him. He's 9-1. He's stepping into the UFC on his debut against Brian Keller, like a very high caliber opponent.
On a main card, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I think if Kevin Natividad has something to show, this is the time.
Yeah, and Brian Keller, he's a veteran. I think he's a pretty excellent fighter, but he's one of those guys that doesn't look like he's a fighter. He doesn't look super ripped. You wouldn't believe this dude was a fighter, but if you hear him speak, he's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing. I feel like he's going to get the submission win in this one.
Yeah, he has a lot of his wins do come by submission. He has a lot of chokes.
He's definitely not a striker. He's definitely a grappler, but I think he's going to be able to dominate. Just having that much more experience in the UFC. He's been on main events before, so I'm pretty confident he'll be able to take this one.
A fun fact, he also has a spinning back fist KO. So,
I saw that. I remember that. That's pretty wild.
So while we're probably going to see some good submission grappling work from him, who knows?
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe something interesting. So just from because of the lack of knowledge I have of Kevin Natividad, I'm going to give the fight to Brian Keller. I think the UFC veteran. Though the crowd isn't an aspect, so the energy of the UFC isn't coming into play in this fight, which it often does against people making their debut. Your first time debuting in the giant stadium in front of all the people and the other fighters, Dana White and everyone. So I think still though Brian Keller has an amazing record, has a lot of experience. I think the salty veteran, will take this against the newcomer.
So do you think it just gives the edge to newer competitors having no fans and no one in the audience?
I don't think it gives the edge necessarily. More so that it takes away a disadvantage of nerves that a lot of these guys, particularly debuting, have. So I think it's because it's a calmer environment. The newer guys are just not at the disadvantage they would normally be in, I think, fighting in front of a crowd.
Okay, that could be. I see. I feel like it's very temperamental based off the person. I feel like some people feed off the energy
Sure.
regardless, and some people will get those nerves. So I think you definitely could be right though. Um, so on to the next fight. Is his name Michelle or is it Michael? It's Michel.
So I think I've heard both pronunciations.
Yeah,
Like, I think it's Michael. So I'm gonna go with Mike.
Michel.
Yeah,
It's like the
I
guy from
like Michelle a
Dodgeball.
lot.
Average Joe's baby. Michel
Michelle Pereira. How do you say it? Pereira? Pereira
Pereira.
against Zalim Imandayev. So when I see Imandayev, it makes me think he's one of the those like Russian mountain Muslims
Yeah, the
similar to Khabib.
Dagestanis, the guys that are
Yeah.
wrestling bears and goats and shit.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting matchup. Michael Pereira is coming off a loss to Diego Sanchez. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, no,
So
I do.
the illegal knee to the head.
So that was for those who didn't see it, Michael Michel, whatever, he was winning the fight definitively for the whole fight. And then the last 2 minutes of the third round, he's kneeing the crap out of Diego. Diego crumbles. He knees him once more in the head. Diego gets a cut and then calls off the fight. Even though, he definitely could have continued fighting. He was just taking the W because he knew he was going to lose the fight otherwise. So that was kind of sad. And actually, I think before that, Michael had also lost to a newcomer, someone that was just off the regional circuit. Because what happened is if you've never seen him fight, he's a crazy fighter. He'll do flips. He loves jumping off the wall, Superman punch. He'll give you a Showtime kick every once in a while. The dude is incredibly exciting to watch. But he was able, the regional competitor that faced him 2 fights ago was able to withstand the first round or two and then took him down and just dominated. So it seems like he was tiring out. I think that's something he was able to overcome because in his last fight, he did not get tired. By the third round, it seemed like he was making Diego tired and he was just kicking the crap out of him. So I think he's improved as a fighter. I saw on Reddit that he's actually training with cows and horses. Apparently he's grappling with cows. This dude's wild. He's nuts, but he's definitely someone that you have to watch because every fight he does, he's doing flips. Something crazy is going to happen. And he's an incredibly exciting fighter. He's one of those fighters where it doesn't really matter if he wins or loses. He's always going to be on the main event just because of his highlights.
Right. Yeah. He's very exciting to watch. And it's, the effectiveness of his techniques and that wild style can be debated, but I think it has to be said that he is improving in it. Like you said, when he lost to Tristan Conley in the regional circuit 2 fights ago, he looked amazing against Diego. He looked much more measured. He was still doing the wild, crazy stuff, but spaced out in a certain cadence where he can maintain it through 3 rounds. I personally think that when I saw Diego Sanchez matched up with him, I thought this was one of the situations, and I still think this, where the UFC is feeding one of the old lions to the new up-and-comer to boost his name. And I think that's what they were hoping would happen with there. Unfortunately, the knee.
But it did kind of the result almost didn't matter. The dude's 23-11. I don't really think people give a crap about his record. I think you can make yourself as a dominant fighter or an exciting fighter. And either of those will give you main card spots. Either of those will make you money. I don't think you have to be a top fighter to be an exciting fighter that everyone wants to watch.
In fact, I think those guys are more exciting because they're more willing to take those crazy risks. It's not about going perfect for them or reaching the top of the heap. It's about putting on a good show. So I think you see more dynamic, interesting, strategies come out of these guys, like a Derek Lewis type.
Yeah, the sheer athleticism Pereira has is just incredible. He's one of those guys that could just flip all over the place. He does break dances in the ring. He's just a tremendous athlete. So I'm really, really looking forward to this fight. Do you know much about Zalim Imadiev? In my head, I just imagine a Khabib type guy that's just going to try to wrestle him and tire him out, which is definitely an effective strategy if you're going up against this guy because it's proven to work.
So from my little bit of research, so again, he's from Moscow, Russia. He's coming off of 2 losses. So he lost to Max Griffin in the UFC and lost to Danny Roberts in the UFC as well. Before that, so leading up until the UFC. So he hasn't won a fight in the UFC yet, but leading up to it, he won 8 fights in a row. in the Russian circuit, I imagine. His wins come by mostly knockout punches, believe it or not. One spinning back elbow. So I'm not sure really. While we do like regionally expect to see like a lot of submission and grappling game from him, his record would go to show that maybe he's got some impressive striking on his end. Maybe he's got some heavy hands. Maybe he uses that kind of like reckless boxing style that you see a lot of like high level wrestlers bring to the UFC because they're not worried about getting taken down.
It could be. I don't think it's going to fare well for him. If most of its fights are won by knockout, I don't really see him knocking out Pereira. I don't think. I think he's just going to get dominated if that's the case. I think if he wants to win, he's got to wrestle him down.
Yeah, Pereira's he has exceptional. Actually, so Zaleem has the range advantage. He has a 3-inch reach advantage. They're both about the same age. Pereira's 26, he's 25. So athletically speaking, like these two, athletically looking at them, they seem pretty matched up well. But I guess then it's going to come down to strategy, technique, knowledge. I mean, Michael Pereira has 34 fights. That's a lot of experience in the ring. That could come into play.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
So I also agree with you. I think Michael Pereira is going to take this, partially because I want him to take it. I want to see these like dynamic, like really exciting kind of like fighting for the show, not for the win necessarily. Fighters like do well.
Mm-hmm. I just want to watch it because it's always exciting. There are a few fighters where you can go, no matter what happens, it's exciting. Even with Yoel Romero, if he faces Adesanya, it's not as exciting. If you put this guy, Pereira, against Adesanya, it'll be exciting. I'm not saying he's going to win or even be competitive, but the dude's going to go for it. The dude, when you're on the ground, he's going to try to do a flip and land on you because he's done this every single time the opponent's been on the ground.
I think it's like a weird loophole in the rules. Like you can't stomp and you can't soccer kick, but you can like bring the legs around in like a weird way. So you do flips and stuff.
But I'll be honest, I don't think he's ever really hit it. Like he doesn't actually ever land on the person. He kind of does it and then lands like across their torso, like on either side of their torso. But it still looks cool. No doubt.
Like, can you imagine he does like a backflip onto like a full mount? He just mounts him and goes to work. That's what it is.
That would be like changing the meta of what MMA is. It's like how do you stop someone from up kicking you? Do a backflip and go into full mount.
I'd love to see like Stipe going for like backflips trying to mount people.
Oh my god, Stipe with his little legs and big torso.
Stipe's all engine, man. You're not going to wear that guy out.
Oh, what a beast. All right.
Okay, going to the next fight is Ovant St. Preux versus Alonzo Menfield. OSP coming off of the COVID. Alonzo Menfield, I have his record up, so he's another Contender Series veteran, same as the first two fighters on the card. He won his Contender Series fight 2 years ago. Since coming into the UFC, he's won 2 fights. He's lost 1. His recent one, he lost in a unanimous decision. But he seems to be a striker. He won most of his fights through punches, or he even has a submission to punches. So he had an opponent give up.
I don't know if you could see him physically. He looks just like he looks like a Costa figure in the light heavyweight division.
That's fantastic.
He looks like a football player, like a juiced up dude. Sorry.
As I say, I hope that OSP also has a very impressive physique. These are both like really big, muscular light heavyweights. I hope to see endurance. Like, I don't want to say I want to see it come into play. I want to see them mindful of their endurance and conditioning. When you have 2 really big, muscular opponents fighting each other, you tend to see them gas themselves out a lot. So I hope I see like smart fighting from these guys, because I know I'll see physically impressive from both of them, because they're both very big, strong athletes. But I want to see strategy come into play in this.
So OSP was actually in heavyweight for his last fight against Ben Rothwell. And Ben Rothwell just pushed him against the cage and just dominated him in that way. It wasn't very impressive by OSP, and it seemed like OSP did get tired. But that was heavyweight. He's cut a lot of weight since. I don't think OSP's at his peak. So I don't know if – honestly, for me, it's a toss-up, because I don't think OSP is at his greatest. I think he's on the second half of his career. He's coming off a loss where he just did get tired out eventually. Alonzo's pretty big dude and might be able to do the same to him. I think if OSP is able to get the takedown and consistently get takedowns, I think he wins just because he's such a good submission artist. But if he's not able to do that and it stays on the feet, I think Alonzo takes it.
Yeah. So I watched the last OSP fight against Ben Rothwell, and so Ben Rothwell is, I don't know if he's the biggest heavyweight, but he is really like he's a
He looks like a
large
bear.
man. Yeah. He has to be like he has to be at least 280, maybe 290. You know what I mean? Like he's a giant heavyweight. And OSP came into that fight about 240, so down maybe 40, 50 pounds. So like against that fight, I think the heavyweight class has a lot of real interesting matchups, particularly with the size of your opponents. So like, is it better to be bigger? Like maybe against some opponents, it's better to be bigger, than some opponents better to be smaller. Like Derek Lewis, for example, when he fought Alexei Olenek.
Olenek, yeah.
Yeah, Olenek came in at 220. So like, I think Derek Lewis did the smart thing. He put on every pound of weight he could bring into that fight just to be the bigger, stronger fighter. And I think Ben Rothwell did a similar kind of thing to OSP, expecting him to be undersized. And I think that's what worked against him. And I think
sorry, I was just going to say OSP. He actually, I think he took the fight pretty late notice. So I don't even think he had much time to really get to the size you would want to be at. So that could have affected it.
Yeah, I think so. That performance, I guess, like I'm not going to count against OSP. It's hard to like take those like big fights like short notice, and it's hard for Ben Rothwell, who has an amazing strategy for his body type. Like he doesn't look like he's not jacked or like physically intimidating in certain ways, but he knows how to use his weight very well. Like pushes you up against the cage, he hangs on you, makes you carry like a lot of weight. So he lost against a heavyweight who's very good at fighting,
and he has a rock hard chin. Like OSP is not going to be knocking him out. So
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can't physically dominate the fight and you can't knock the guy out, it's going to be very difficult, which is what happened.
But I think so. Just knowing like light heavyweight is OSP's probably his correct weight class.
Yeah,
I think it's where he belongs. He has an amazing physique for light heavyweight. He's very cut, very muscular. And I personally, I kind of agree with you. I think OSP is going to win by submission. I think Alonzo Manfield's probably an amazing athlete and fighter, and probably has a lot of like good career in front of him. I don't think he's ready for a submission artist like OSP, like just for the raw experience that he's gone going against him. So Alonzo Manfield's only loss came to a decision. I don't think he's been submitted, or I don't think he's maybe gone against someone who has the like grappling credentials of OSP. So I think OSP sneaks a choke, and he's probably going to do that weird Von Fluke. He's going to do the Von Fluke choke out like on some weird angle the guy's not expecting. So that's how I see this fight going. But on the other side, if Alonzo Manfield beats OSP, I mean that's another streaking like prospect now.
Yep. I would say it's like I would give probably 60% to OSP to win. But it really depends on if he's able to get the guy down. If it stays on the feet, again, Alonzo's, I'm pretty confident he's taking it.
So I imagine we'll see like if I think we might see some interesting cage work here, because if fighters can't win straight up standing up, you push them up against the cage where you do work there. And I think OSP can do amazing work at that like really, really tight constricted range.
So what Ben Rothwell did to OSP is what OSP is going to do to Alonzo essentially.
I think, but like rather than just like doing Ben Rothwell's like hanging and like kind of like his endurance slow grind, I think OSP is going to be working more grappling techniques against the cage, working for the neck, going for the submission there.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we go on to our main event of the card: Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai. I think this is going to be an excellent fight. I think Alistair Overeem, throughout his career, has continually progressed, which is pretty amazing. The fact that he's been able to continue to evolve this late in his career. His record's 46-18. Like this dude,
staggering.
This dude has fought 64 fights,
and
a no contest, 65 professional fights, and he's still going. And he's I think ranked number 6 in the heavyweight division right now, which is insane to me. He's going against Augusto Sakai, which I believe he's a striker that tries to overwhelm his opponents with volume. I think he's pretty good conditioning. But I don't think he's going to be able to wear Alistair Overeem out. I feel like Overeem's biggest weakness is his chin. I think it's being able to take that huge shot. So I'm not sure Augusto Sakai can actually knock him out. And if he doesn't, I think Alistair Overeem wins by having more experience, being more technical.
I agree. Alistair Overeem needs no introduction anymore in the world of MMA. Even before his mixed martial arts career, he had a very impressive kickboxing career before that. He's a veteran of many, many, many fights. He's one of the highest paid UFC fighters, by the way, simply because of how the Reebok pay scale goes. Because he has like 20 plus fights for the UFC, he always makes like six figures because it's based on how many fights you've had.
Mm.
Going into it,
I mean, if he
Augusto
wasn't,
Sakai,
I don't think he would still be competing.
no, absolutely not. Looking at Augusto Sakai's record, he's beaten some interesting opponents, but nobody of super high caliber, particularly in the modern heavyweight division. So his noticeable victories, I think, come first over Andrei Arlovsky, who's certainly past his prime, but still managing to do fights in the. I don't even know if he's still in heavyweight. If he is, he probably shouldn't be. And then against Blagov Ivanov, one of the he looks like a big Russian dad with a big gut.
He looks pretty chunky. He looks like he has dad strength. You're right.
Yeah, so he's also Blagov Ivanov is an amazing fighter simply because of his record. He's fought in a lot of fights. He's a big veteran. So it's an impressive win to be able to beat.
He lost to Derek Lewis last year.
So he did. Right. So yeah, he's going up there. He's fighting contenders. Augusto Sakai is a Japanese Brazilian mixed martial artist. So he's from Japanese immigrants who came to Brazil. Mm. He fought in Bellator. His record in Bellator is really impressive. He has 3 wins, 1 draw, and a loss to Czech Congo, who Czech Congo was a freak of the old guard. Yeah, I think I agree with all your points against hang on, let me pull it up. With Alistair Overeem being the better fighter and being able to take those knockouts, being able to withstand and be able to deliver like a lot of damage. I agree. Alistair's chin is certainly probably compromised just because of the amount of knockouts that he's received throughout his life. I mean, I thought that Francis killed him when they fought.
I don't know if he can be a top 5 fighter again simply because of that. When I look at it, he's not ranked number 6, and when I look at anyone above him right now, I'm just like, I don't know who he could beat there, but I think there's a very good chance he wins this fight. So, Derek Lewis, Rosenstruck, not Cormier, Curtis Blades, Ngannou, who's he beating from there?
I mean, it's arguable that he did beat Rosenstruck.
Okay, I mean, he definitely dominated the fight until he got his lip busted open, his face broken. Yeah. But
I think it comes down to, I guess, the technical. I don't think he wins certain matchups because of how he fights and how his body is at this point. I don't think he beats Curtis Blades because of the wrestling. I don't think he beats Francis because Francis is entirely knockout power.
Mentally, I don't even think he could beat Francis.
Francis just shut him off.
Yeah, he broke him.
Yeah, so I think if it comes to like a standing trade, like a war of technique, against maybe even like a Stipe or maybe even like a Derek Lewis, though Derek Lewis is carrying a lot of power nowadays. I think Alistair does well in this matchup. In those matchups, I think he does well against this matchup with Augusto Sakai, who fights with volume and technique. So I think we're going to see a lot of. Hopefully, we see Alistair Overeem rise to the occasion and show off his amazing pedigree, his amazing tool set that he has for fighting.
I agree, but I would also like to see Sakai win because that's just another contender. I feel like the heavyweight division is becoming slowly one of the better divisions in the UFC. Even though it is top heavy, the guys at the top are really, really good. So I would love to see another new name up there. But if we saw Overeem win, it's just a testament to the fact that this dude's just a beast. What else is there to say? He's been fighting forever. He's only been improving technically, maybe not physically. So either way, I'd be happy. I'd say I'd give the edge to Alistair Overeem, though. I would say probably about 55% to 45, so very close. But I would still give him the edge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll give Alistair the edge, but it's hard just because, like we said, his weakness is his chin, and the heavyweight division, everyone's kind of packing some kind of power, pretty much.
Yeah, you can't really be a heavyweight without having some kind. You can't really be a UFC fighter without having power. You could choose to not throw your full power. You could be like a Max Holloway, but if Max threw up his hardest punch and tried to knock someone out, I bet he could. I bet he could do that. I think everyone does have power. It's how you choose to manage your gas tank and the volume of shots you have. So, especially in the heavyweight division, regardless, this card that like just having talked through it, I'm actually more excited now. I think there's several good fights. I'm excited to see OSP and Alistair Overeem, the old guard, see what they could do, see if they can still hang with the younger guys.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really, really entertaining. It's a wide spread across all the divisions, so we're going to see 5 fights is in 5 different weight classes. So you get to see all sorts of displays of physicality and technique. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great card altogether. I hope only thing I guess I have to say is I hope we see Ricky Simone overcome whatever. Maybe if he failed the COVID test, I'm not 100% sure why they had to pull him out, but I hope to see him back in the rotation on a future UFC card soon.
I agree. And with that, that's the end of our predictions for the UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Sakai. So now we're just going to have more of a general discussion. And today we're actually excited to have some viewer questions. We had some people send an email to backofthemob@gmail.com. So if you want to be featured on our episodes too, join the discussion, be part of the community, please do. We'd love to have you here. We'd love to bring you guys on the show. So our first question comes from Michael. You could put where you're from, but if you just want to put your name, that's fine as well. The first question is, what do we think about John Jones going to heavyweight? Should he be getting a title shot right away? And should he fight Brock Lesnar?
All right, so I'll start off my answers with that. I think it makes sense for John Jones to go to heavyweight. I think he's getting to the critical age where I think his body's starting to slow down, and I think putting on weight is a general technique a lot of athletes do to prolong their careers. Like look at even in other sports, like a Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal put on a bunch of weight and got really big and strong, and he managed to prolong his career probably another 6 or 7 years by doing that. So I think John Jones is probably looking at like a similar kind of strategy. I think he's got a lot of frame to put weight on. You know, he's really long, he's really wide, so he can probably carry the heavyweight load. I personally think he should get the Stipe fight first. It's hard to.
You think he should or shouldn't?
Should he should fight Stipe.
Interesting.
Because it's hard for me to justify a champion fighting a not champion. Like even like the Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz fights, I thought were kind of like poorly planned in some ways, because like you're a champion, you're at the top of your heap. You should be either fighting contenders for your belt or you should be fighting another champion.
Was McGregor the champion when he fought Diaz?
He was a champion.
Are you sure?
I think he was a champion in some division. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, like even ignoring that, I still I think that John Jones should take on Stipe, and I think it'll be an amazing fight. Both fighters, I think, will probably like tip the scales at about the same weight. Interesting like mix of styles, like between like John Jones's like weird wrestling, like lengthy pedigree, and his like sort of point boxing that he does against like Stipe's grit and technique. And I would love to see it, and I think John Jones should get the heavyweight chance.
So you
first.
think he should get it over Francis right away?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you watch the Francis against Stipe fight. I don't think there's too many like points in that fight where you can argue like, oh, Francis can come back from this. He's competitive in it. Like other than like blowing his load and smashing for 2 rounds, I don't think Francis has really impressed me enough to the point where he's like should be back in there. Like, of course, he has a chance of getting another big like knockout hit. He has that against everyone. He hasn't showed improvement otherwise.
Yeah,
like
but he hasn't shown improvement, but he's also not had the opportunity because he's knocking dudes out too quick. One argument I would have.
Blues fight though. Like he should have like degradation there.
Yeah, but he's had I think 2 KOs since then. But my question is, who you need Francis to continue fighting because he's one of, if not the biggest heavyweight draw right now. Mm-hmm. And who does he fight if not for the championship? Like, do you really keep him on the side? How long can you keep him on the sidelines when he's one of your biggest attractions? I would argue he could even probably get more pay-per-views than John Jones. Like, everyone loves to see Francis because he's just a freak of nature. And so is John Jones, but we've seen John Jones for a decade now. As far as just John Jones going to heavyweight in general, I think he does keep some of his advantages that helped him in his career. Like, just like you said, being lengthy. I think he's like an 83 or 84-inch reach, which is just super abnormal. He's able to keep people away. But against a guy like Stipe, who has incredible boxing technique, he's able to slip punches incredibly well. I think Stipe gets in on him, and I think Stipe dominates the fight. I will say, initially, I thought John Jones going to heavyweight probably wouldn't do great. Thinking about it more, I think he actually would be pretty dominant if he's able to still wrestle. I haven't seen him wrestle in a while. I don't know if his body's physically able to do it. Um, and I also don't know how much weight he's going to be able to put on and still be able to move effectively.
I mean, that's always a question between like switching weight classes is like how much of your advantage in speed do you bring up and how much of your power do you bring down, you know?
It's going to be interesting for me to see the OSP fight because I'll see a guy that will move to heavyweight and then move back. And I want to see if he's able to continue to dominate at light heavyweight and to prove, maybe he just couldn't fight at the higher division. Maybe he just needed more time. How much time does John Jones really need? I don't know. I would personally say that Ngannou should get the title shot right away because I think there are other fights John Jones can have in the heavyweight division. But would John Jones, a champion of a decade, want to fight a non-title fight? Probably not. Would he fight, like you asked, Michael, should he fight Brock Lesnar? If he gets the opportunity to fight Brock Lesnar, he should absolutely fight Brock Lesnar. But I think Brock Lesnar recently is only talking about this because his contract's up with the WWE and it's a negotiating tactic. He's like, oh, I don't want to fight anymore. You gotta sign me for way more money, or else I'm gonna go back to the UFC. That fight would kind of be a joke because John Jones definitely is gonna dominate that fight. But who wouldn't watch that? Would you watch a John Jones versus freaking Brock Lesnar? Of course you would, right?
I mean, absolutely, but I'd feel some kind of way about it. I don't love Brock in the UFC for like a few different reasons.
Wait, are they allowed to have steroids? I feel like there should be no testing for that fight.
Yeah, no. If there's no testing, I'm more on board. You know what I mean? Let's just be real with each other. You know what I mean? There's no way Brock can be competitive in the UFC without steroids at this point. He's 43 years old. If not steroids, it's not like outright cheating. He needs like testosterone replacement. He needs some kind of like medical procedure to get his body in a position to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like Brock, so Brock has a very interesting fight career. He streaked very like hard, very early, and then petered off. So he hasn't really won a fight in the majority of this decade. Like he beat Mark Hunt, I guess, but then got like overturned. Like I don't know if it was overturned, but he got caught with top for like weird steroid foot cream or something. He claims about it afterward.
Yeah, please. I mean, just look at him. Like, give me a break. That he's like 40 years old. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, so I don't think Brock really belongs in the UFC, and I feel like while I am all about like the freak shows of like giant guys fighting each other in the kind of like the circus parade, getting an event together. I don't feel like that should be the top attraction of the UFC, and that's kind of what Brock Lesnar does. Brock Lesnar is the highest paid athlete in WWE, by the way, if you didn't know that. I think he's the highest paid guy. So I think I agree with you. I think it's a tactic. I think it's going to cost the UFC a lot of money to get Brock Lesnar to fight, and I don't think they necessarily have the budget, the budgetary freedom right now with COVID and everything going on to go out and sign those kinds of people. But going back to like John Jones and Stipe, what I would do with Francis, dude, if I was Dana White, I would try to get Francis a boxing match against like I'm serious. I would try to get him a boxing match against a really big name in this like downtime. Because think about it. So even if he does fight Stipe next, Stipe's going to be out for a good little bit. You know what I mean? I don't know how much damage he took from DC, but it was a 5-round fight. There was eye pokes. There was like a lot of 25 minutes of beating on each other. And he's an older fighter, so it's going to take him a little longer to like recover his body. Just so he seems to be taking about a year-long break between fights. I don't think he's going to be that long this time. But I think Francis is going to be on the bench for a while, one way or another. And if they like decide like to do John Jones against Stipe, Francis is going to be on the bench for a year plus. Then I think it makes sense. Like he shows he loves to box.
Yeah, that's true. The question of Ngannou in boxing, I feel like his cardio is not there. He's so many fast twitch muscle fibers that he slows down dramatically, and we've seen this like against Stipe, for instance. By the second, maybe third round, he was so gassed he could barely throw a punch. I don't know how long he could survive. If the dude he's facing just survives the first few rounds, I think he wins. Almost like the Conor McGregor fight, but to a higher degree, because Conor was able to last like 10 rounds. And I rewatched that fight. Conor won a bunch of rounds. Like he did very well for what it was, but I don't see Ngannou being able to last. Either he gets a KO or he loses by maybe decision.
Yeah, I guess I'm not looking at it as a way of like extending Francis' career and like maybe getting into boxing. I'm looking at it as like a way to keep Francis
Filling the
satisfied and
gap,
certainly
yeah.
filling the
Gotcha.
gap, but also like it would build his name. Like Conor McGregor's name exploded from this boxing bout, right? I think Francis could probably do the same thing. Even if he goes in there and loses and gets gassed, the lead up to it, the name recognition he's going to receive from like the boxing community, like the more fans will attract to the UFC, the money he'll make will be very, very nice, I'm sure.
Okay, you've convinced me. I don't think that's a bad idea, but I think Dana White did come out and say that Ngannou has the next title shot, and I'm pretty sure because he had promised him like a while ago, because this trilogy's been going on. The heavyweight division's been on hold for like 2.5 years, which is nuts.
Right?
The same two guys have been fighting for the championship.
And it was the previous light heavyweight champion. This is exactly the John Jones thing. The light heavyweight champ came up.
Yeah, it's so funny. So yeah, great question. Thank you for sending that in. Our next, we have one more question. It's from James. He said, "Hey guys, love listening to you. We really appreciate it, by the way." He said,
Mhm.
"What is your favorite fighting era?" So just for me to start this off, I've been watching since around I think 2016, 20. I think since the end of Anderson Silva's reign is when I really had started watching. But I had caught up. I've since then caught up on a lot of the history that's gone on. Um, as far as my favorite era, for me, I think it's Pride, just because it's just we talk about it all the time. But the idea of the freak show, the idea that it doesn't necessarily matter if it's for a belt, if it's for a championship, for what ranking you are. Sometimes we just want to see like crazy matchups, and that's what it provided. It provided with the absolute freak shows with no USADA testing, no testing of any kind. In the contract, it specifically said, basically, we're going to test you for weed. We're going to make sure you don't do weed, but steroids, no problem. So, for me, I guess the Pride era was my favorite part.
For me, I get like I have love for every era. Like I started
Me
watching
too. Yeah.
UFC and like MMA fighting like slightly before you, so I saw like the sort of back half of Anderson Silva's career. I personally really enjoy the modern era, like for a lot of different reasons. Not just like I do miss the freak shows of Pride. Don't get me wrong, but I like that in the modern era, MMA fighting is more accessible than it's ever been. Like UFC has fights on every single weekend. There's multiple organizations now between Bellator and if we want to like branch out, go to like ONE FC in Singapore. I think the modern era has the best athletes, it's got the best fighters, it's got the most accessibility to fights. It's got the most like fight knowledge, even with like broadcasters and stuff. It's got more organizations. I think the modern era, like today, is the best time to be a UFC fan, personally.
I actually agree with you. If I'm taking out any kind of nostalgia, today is definitely the best time because you have so many stylistic matchups that could not have happened in the past because people are so dynamic now. Everyone knows how to do everything. It's to what degree you could do all those things. So you'll still see the dominant wrestler, the dominant jiu-jitsu guy, but they're also well-rounded. Could be obviously as a wrestler, but the dude put down Conor McGregor, knocked him
Right.
on his ass. Like it's not like he can't box, not can't punch. So it's just how dynamic, how talented the guys are now. We're actually getting world class talent because it's been around for long enough that people could see it as a viable career. In the past, like even if you were the best of the best, you weren't being paid nearly enough for what you were doing to your body. But today you are, and people are finally going, hey, maybe growing up I shouldn't play football, I shouldn't play whatever else. I should go straight into MMA to become the best one day. And we're seeing those kids coming up, and the younger generation is absolutely dominating.
I also think like a lot of the shaft has been worked through. Like the one of the issues with like past MMA stuff is you'll see people bring in nonsense martial arts and like nonsense strategies into fights that just don't work. So all that's been like worked through. You know what I mean? You're not going to see like stylistic blowouts to the point where it's like an embarrassment anymore. You know, the fights are at least competitive to where like it brings you the tension of watching. It grabs your interest in seeing like, oh, like what's this guy going to do like with these tool sets that they both kind of understand that they work.
The one
You
thing
know.
I would say I don't like about the modern era is people are very cautious now, as they should be about their health. They're not going to stand and bang, as they call it. But in the old days, you had the Robbie Lawlers and the Condits, just no regard for themselves. They're just going to go at it, first man to drop. I mean, that's what it is. So I love seeing those brawls. I love seeing the reckless abandon. And we're not seeing that anymore because it's not smart. but it's really entertaining. So I would say that's something I do miss. And that's why I think some of the fights today are boring, because the guys are too technical. They're waiting for their shot. They really don't want to take any big risks. But that's only some of the guys. A lot of the guys are still willing to take the risk. You'll have guys like Pereira that are doing backflips trying to land on you, so it's all over the place.
And also, like, even if it is like a kind of boring fight, like not to say it was boring, but let's say Neil Magny against Robbie Lawler like last weekend.
Super dominant, yeah.
Yeah, even though like it was super dominant, very one-sided. Like, it's not that he's like mugging a guy on the street. No, he's like doing this to Robbie Lawler, an ex-champion who's shown like a lot of like really amazing like talent and fights. So it's good to see. It's good even if there is like domination and boring fight styles. You're doing it with the best athletes and the best competitors in the world doing it. Where I feel like that just like takes it up a notch of interesting, like the intricacies of what's going on. Like, it's not like who can take the most punches now. Now it's like who knows the head position game when you're clinched up against the fence better in order to like break out or maintain dominance. And I feel like it's just kind of increasing the meta to like another level of like understanding of like the fight.
And after watching it for a while, like the jiu-jitsu and ground game becomes way more interesting to watch. Like, even watching Magny just move around his body and use his long limbs in different ways, seeing guys with long arms get weird chokes that you wouldn't see generally, I think that's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, and just to like relate this all back to the question, I think we see more of that in the modern era. I think it's the best era to be a fan to watch. And of course, in the modern era, when you have like Fight Pass and all that stuff, you can go back in and watch those lovely freak shows from back in the day where you have like sumo wrestlers fighting
Bob
karate
Sapp.
fighters.
Bob Sapp's my favorite MMA fighter.
Oh, do you know Bob Sapp used
You broke my nose.
So one of Bob Sapp's strategies before was the headbutt. So he would just lay on top of you, hold your arms down, and just headbutt you.
Oh my God. Yeah. The dude's like 400 pounds. Can you imagine? Holy crap.
Yeah, it probably worked very well.
Yeah, he's got the GH, so his head's just like super big.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you for the questions, guys. We really appreciate it. I think there was one more story you wanted to bring up, the Iranian dude. We have this crazy story in MMA right now. It involves Trump and Dana White. So you take it off, Seska.
Yeah. So the other, I think the video came out either yesterday or the day before. It's Dana White giving a speech to the public and talking about an Iranian fighter by the name of Nadiv Nafkari. He's a champion wrestler from Iran. And apparently he attended a peaceful protest, and this is all like secondhand wording from Dana White. We don't know the details of exactly what happened. But supposedly he attended a peaceful protest. The protest got a little out of hand. Some stuff happened. I think a security guard was killed. And now that fighter is is slated to be executed for sedition or whatever crime the Iranian government put against him. Mm-hmm. And so Dana White is reaching out. First, he reached out to Trump, which I feel like is so interesting that we like – the fight promoters like Dana White, or even like the fake, like not fake fights, but like WWE promoters like Vince McMahon have like direct and personal connections to the president is just hilarious to me.
It is, but actually I think he spoke at Trump's rally recently, at the RNC maybe.
Yeah,
which is very funny. But to me, it's not so strange because I feel like they're both the best promoters, the best brand managers at what they do. And Trump had a history of the WWE. I think he loved the WWE. I think he could have owned it. He would want to have done that, So they seem to be two sides of the same coin, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very strange, I think. But yeah, good. So Dana White reached out to Donald Trump, who then apparently is reaching out to the international community and to the Iranian government to try to get some leniency for the Naveed Afkari. So Dana White didn't like ask for his release or anything like that. Like, he just said like to give him to take away the death sentence. So even if this fighter like is like taken off the death penalty, he still might be put away for like the foreseeable future, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just man, do you really know what's going on in Iran? I know they generally have unrest, but do you know specifically what's going on?
Politically, it's like always hard to say. I know the United States did a lot of like meddling during like Bush 1 in Iran. And
well, I think they were trying to develop nukes, and we had the nuclear deal, and then that fell through. I personally, I think they have a ton of sanctions on the country, and I think the people are probably fed up with the fact that they can't interact with the rest of the world, and they probably want to change. And then the theocracy is like, no. So, that's probably where
the
it comes
theocracy
from.
probably feeds off the sanctions, like as awful as that is. You know what I mean? Like they say, like these other countries and everyone else is taking away your freedom to buy cheap MP3 players or whatever the fuck, like they're not allowed to have.
It could go both ways. Like in North Korea, for instance, I would bet the North Koreans wouldn't want to be there. I don't think maybe they hate America for real, but I think a lot of them on the underground would go, it's probably better if we didn't have all this stuff going on. We weren't such a weird country.
Well, I think it's like, think about how politically involved the average person is, like anywhere in the world, right? I think most people like desire to be politically detached and not have to be involved with like the goings on of the people who like run things around them.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing with the Iranian government or the Iranian people. Like, no offense to them, it's the same thing everywhere in the world. But I imagine they are being like whatever information is happening to them, like the sanctions, is being filtered through the perspective of the leadership or the media that's delivering them that information.
I think they were able to like shut off the internet too and stuff like that. I don't know how happy I would be if my country shut off the internet. You know what I mean?
I agree.
This is politics. We don't need to get the rest of the world in our Average Joe's MMA podcast. We just stick to MMA here. Get away from the craziness of the world, like I said before. Do you have any final topics?
No final topics. Just want to wish the best for Naveed Nafkari and his family. I hope Dana White and Donald Trump and whoever else like gets involved on this manages to to save this fella if he is really innocent of what he's done. It's a real damn shame to see like championship talent not be allowed to compete for reasons that's like not related to the sport or the athleticism that they go with.
I agree, but I'm also a little bit hopeful because I feel like countries do want to support their athletes, especially when they're really good. I think last year in bodybuilding, there was some Iranian dude that was able to get a visa last minute despite all the sanctions with Iran. So maybe we can have some kind of influence. Regardless, though, I think he's going to jail for a little bit, so we won't be able to see him for a while. But hopefully he continues training somehow. Hopefully he'll stay in shape. And when it seems like Dana White's willing to accept him when it's all said and done. So I wish him the best. Everyone have your thoughts with them. It's really sad that that's the case. But, I'm also happy to see that someone like Dana White can come out and fight so hard for that person. It shows that.
I didn't know this fighter beforehand. I don't know. I haven't heard much about Naveed Nafkari. So it just goes to speak like, it's always like a weird conversation how much Dana White cares about his fighters because when like fighter pay comes into question, like he gets a little tense, but then he does things like this to like go out and support, or when like the one fighter's daughter was kidnapped and all that awfulness happened around that, he was very understanding.
I think some people are very loyal, and Dana White, just like Trump, values loyalty to a very high degree. So I think him doing this, it's not only good for this situation, but it shows other fighters, hey, I'm going to have your back, which is really, really good thing to see. I don't see other major sports owners, presidents doing anything like that. I think they would
fighters directly.
Exactly. They wouldn't do it directly. So I think that's a great thing, and hopefully we can get something done.
Yeah. And you made a really great point earlier. I want to just like reiterate, like the athletes of a lot of these countries are amazing representatives of their nation, of the unity of the world. Like look at Habib and what he's done for Russian fighters and Russian athletes.
Adesanya and Usman even.
Usman. I mean, what's his name?
Peter Yan.
Francis Ngannou.
Even Stipe. America, heavyweight champ, baby. Let's go. Cleveland, Ohio. Right. I'm a firefighter and I beat ass.
And then he's fighting against like a political refugee in Francis Ngannou who like walked to France somehow,
lives in the woods and then somehow finds his way to a boxing gym.
Right. So I hope like the beautiful nature of sports and athleticism like wins the day in regards to
transcends politics,
Exactly. All right. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for the questions. Thank you for listening in. We really appreciate all you guys. We'll be back Sunday, I believe. We'll give you a recap of the fights. We haven't done a live stream yet. We may do it this weekend, but search Average Joe's MMA podcast on YouTube. You'll find us there. Please subscribe. So if we do a co-stream, a Fighter's Companion type thing, you can join us, ask questions. We can have a discussion. The whole point of this show is to unite the average Joes of MMA. We're all not the most hardcore. We're not all fighting in the ring. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy it, talk about it, and have a great time. So thank you for being part of the community. We really appreciate you guys, and we will see you Sunday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.